So I am the project director of Hollow, and in terms of it being an interactive documentary, you'll learn about how and why it is such a thing, that term we like to use. But most importantly, it's, while I've been traveling with Hollow and everything, it's always important to realize that there's a huge team behind this project. And a team of designers and developers, and Robert Hall is one of those. He's in the front, so if you have any technical questions, really feel free to ask them, because Robert's our senior engineer. He's right here in the front row. And I don't always have that with me. So I come from a journalism, linear filmmaking background, and I'm originally from West Virginia. It is its own state. We're not Western Virginia, just in case you guys were curious. And I left there in 2009, and at that point I had read a book called Hollowing Out the Middle, which really doesn't have anything to do with the name of Hollow, but it was about rural brain drain, youth exodus out of what we know as small town America. And the case study was in Iowa, but it could have been in West Virginia. And it really hit home to me because I knew that I was leaving my state, and there were a lot of people that were also leaving, young people. And so I was interested as a filmmaker in documenting this. Then I actually started researching it and started finding the different towns in different parts of our country that are losing population at really alarming rates. I found that my own home state is the state leading our country in death rates. So we have a higher death rate than birth rate, and Maine was the only state to join us in that this past year. So once I narrowed it down to my home state, which I never thought I would really do a project about West Virginia once I had left West Virginia, found McDowell County, West Virginia. McDowell County is a former really coal-producing county. It's in the Pocahontas coal fields. It made the steel that built a lot of the buildings we see around us right now. I mean, it makes metallurgical steel, or coal, which is irrelevant, but it makes the steel that we see around us in Pittsburgh and Detroit and New York. And I'm from a coal mining family, and so this was a very personal story. And when I realized that all 10 towns in McDowell County are dying, I knew it was something that we needed to address pretty quickly. So I went to McDowell and started meeting people, and going in with a linear mindset, and left with a sort of overwhelming sense that this could not just be a film with an easy beginning, middle, and end, that this was a project that was very relative to what's happening all across the country and world, for that matter, and that this could be a project that could potentially unlock something that I feel interactive documentaries can do, which is that shows an evolving story over time and really encourages communities to get involved in the production process and beyond. So that's sort of the concept behind it. So these are just some pictures of people that were in McDowell. I went there from May to September last year. From August of 2011 till December, I started sort of pre-production research and everything, and realizing I had to have a pretty diverse team behind this. So these are sort of the goals that I had in mind, and granted, the project, as you guys know, if you're media producers, things change over time. So I really wanted to communicate the significance of Southern West Virginia, but also small towns. Empower the people to actually shoot the footage themselves, and I provided 3 community workshops while we were there to actually train them. Provide a more multi-dimensional portrayal of the area. And this isn't just in McDowell, this is Appalachia in general. Being from Appalachia and growing up in that area, you're very aware of the way outsiders see you. And it's because outsiders have always controlled our story. So I really wanted to put that story back into the hands of the people that live there. And so this is probably the most relevant is, I think we have like 147 countries represented now, people that have viewed the site. We launched on June 20th. And I really never, this was a goal of mine, is so that people all across the globe would get a better understanding of the issues that are facing these places in West Virginia, but I really never believed that people in like Tanzania would be logging into holodocumentary.com and relating to them and sending me an email. So it's this medium has really opened it up to a whole different audience that's just been really gratifying. Let's skip this. This isn't relevant. So I've sort of mentioned why I would make Hollow interactive. It's an evolving story. Huge participation. Also, how many of you guys have been to holodocumentary.com? Have seen the site? So several of you. We'll go through it in a little bit, but one of the things that a lot of people, when they visit the site, they don't realize is there, and it may just be poor design on our part, but we developed two separate sites. We developed an HTML5 site that's very video heavy, over 4 hours of content that if you put it down in one straight line, you would have to watch that much to see it all. But we also developed a WordPress tool for the community there to use. And the reason we did that is because during these workshops that we were holding, they were telling us, you know, we feel that the reason people aren't getting involved in the issues that are surrounding us is because we don't have any way to communicate. We don't have a local newspaper anymore. We don't have, all we have is Facebook. We need something that's more official that we can get people involved with our initiatives and get things behind it. So we created a WordPress tool that they can use. And, you know, the technology gap is an obvious issue. So any of you guys that have been to holodocumentary.com, you know that it takes a pretty good connection speed to view all the content. And so we really wanted to make them a tool that they could access, they could go to on their mobile phone, or very simple accessibility for that. So this is just some photos from the training during the production, and you'll see in when I start showing the site, a lot of these photographs to the right, we had a lot of photographs that were submitted by the community. We did workshops, balloon. How many of you guys know what balloon mapping is? You do? Cool. So, I mean, we just sort of jumped on this idea because we thought it was really fun, and we were concerned that maybe not everyone would be interested in storytelling, and we really wanted to get a lot of people in the community involved. So we were like, what other activities can we do that will engage like kids that aren't necessarily interested in picking up a camera? Well, we found out about balloon mapping, and what we did is we had the kids help us map each of the towns. And so right now those maps are living in the local library and are being used as sort of resource allocation. So they get to see like those big open fields that aren't being used anymore, that used to be a coal preparation area that's been torn down. It's like, oh, that could actually be a football field, you know, like we're looking for a place to put a swing set or whatever. So like it's just a new way of seeing their community. So we did balloon mapping workshops, were a blast. These are some of the projects that inspired us for a number of different reasons, but even though these projects inspired us, one of the main ones that inspired me was Pine Point, Welcome to Pine Point, which is by the NFB. And the reason is because it just really makes you, it really puts you in a place. If any of you guys have seen Pine Point, the sound and the tactile sort of design of it just really puts you in that place. And we really wanted people to feel like they were traveling to a place when they came to Holo. So what is our approach? This is all very high-level stuff that we defined very early, and some of this came through at the end, some of it didn't because of funding and schedules, but the main thing to get from this is we really wanted this to be a cinematic experience. We didn't want this to feel like a website. And in order for, you know, we're funded by the Tribeca Film Institute's New Media Grant, and they really respect the idea that this is its own form and it's not just ancillary to a film. And I think that in order for interactive docs and web-native films to really gain the respect they need, to get the funding, get the attention they need, we need to be seen as something that's just as powerful as a linear film. And that, you know, the frustrating thing for me is when we launched this, people were asking me, where's the linear side of this? And so I think that it's important to acknowledge that there's a new form of cinema that we can create on the web. And so these are some of our priorities, but you know, the main thing was that we did create an emotional story arc and a cinematic experience. These are the two different tools that we built. So the interactive experience, which is the one you guys would see if you went to holodocumentary.com, is on the left. And those are sort of the, you can zoom in a little bit, sort of the things that we had in store for what we would like to do. Some of these things we didn't do. We did one 360 multi-cam toggle was the idea in the beginning, but some of the things didn't come through. But basically the idea is that the community tool feeds into the HTML5 experience. So every time you come to holodocumentary.com, potentially there could be a story update. So the community is living and breathing in McDowell County, West Virginia, and you can watch their story, which is sort of like a time capsule, because I left in September of last year, and their stories have changed a lot, so it's sort of up to them to keep it up to date. So So, how many of you guys have produced interactive pieces? Yeah, so it's something that, I came from the linear tradition, and, I have one user experience as a filmmaker. I edit that film, and I want people to react a certain way at certain points and feel really confident in that. With Hollow, it was a whole new approach for me to come to the realization that someone could come at this project from any different angle that they wanted to, and it had to make sense. They had to have a meaningful experience, and so that literally meant me taking every piece. I had 7 terabytes of footage, just to give you an idea of how much I collected. That was the community footage and my footage. Breaking it down to every little moment, and just like, when are those things triggered? When are things going to happen? At what point is any sound going to come in? So there's a lot of content strategy that had to come into it before we even, before Robert even was able to write any code. We went through, and I'm sure you guys that are developing for interactives know this, we went through about 6 different design iterations before we came to what is Hollow. This was a really, really, really old one. This was before I even started shooting. That's actually my niece. This was the whole idea of like people being, I knew the area. This is before I went to the area and actually started doing the workshops, but I knew people were really tied to the land. So I thought maybe the land would be a function of navigation. So then maybe the way we would navigate through this would be through the land. This was sort of a very, I don't even know where we were going with this. We were trying to really bring in like a much larger audience than we needed to of defining homes, which reminds me, how many of you guys have Instagram right now? Probably all of you. So while I'm talking, if it's not too distracting, if you could go into your phone and tag any of your photos that remind you of home with Holler Home, H-O-L-L-E-R Home, then they'll be added to the experience when I get to that in like 3 minutes. So if you could do it, that'd be awesome. Any of you guys that want to show your photos. Bringing about for me, being a West Virginian, it was important for me to bring about the terms of, the relative terms that we all get. Displacement, home, all these things that we all understand, and not just make this about a people and place that's sort of been defined as the American other for so long. This is very early design sketches. We had actually decided at one point there was going to be this like chat room type of thing. Another time we had decided you would take on the role of a baby, and it would be like a game. You would choose what life you wanted to be, and like by the end of the time you'd end up being a coal miner, or you'd end up leaving your community or whatever. So we had like defined these different adult roles and baby roles based on the people I had documented, which is what this is. You start out as Jessica. And so this was tailoring the experience to your zip code. This was more of a, more linear than we ended up being. It's kind of hard to explain, but just to show you all the iterations that you can go through. One thing we really wanted to avoid in Hollow is this this tendency on the web to, when we go to find out information, we go to it quickly and we want to get out. So if we want to know a recipe for something, we get that recipe and we get out, or whatever it is. And we don't necessarily, I think that's changing over the past couple of years, of us spending more time on the web, obviously with streaming and different things, but we really didn't want people to sort our content at all. Like, we didn't want them to be able to like search for a certain type of story and watch it, because the thought of like someone treating this story that, if you were going to a film, linear film, you wouldn't walk in the middle because you knew that's when the coal mining segment would come on. You would watch the whole story to understand the context and be able to appreciate that story. So we really didn't want people to just be able to sort and turn our cinematic experience into a database, basically. So this was an early idea, which we scrapped really early, which was being able to sort. It didn't take long before we decided not to do that. So are there any questions real quick before I'm going to just launch the site?
Do you talk about the amount of time it took you to iterate through this?
Yeah. So So we really started the design process and the user experience design in like August, September. And then when did you start actually hard coding? February? We were late. We were supposed to launch in May, and we launched June 20th. But that was because
About January.
January.
Yeah.
And what
we? How many people were the we during the iteration?
Yeah. So I actually had one designer user experience guy who's sort of the information architect on it. His name's Jeff Soik, and myself. I had 2 video editors, and then we had Robert, and then we had an interactive developer, Russell. And his main role really he helped Robert a ton. He can answer the questions the way he did, but he did a lot of the data visualizations, which you'll see. So September till, June 20th when we launched. And we were, I don't know if any of you guys knew when we launched, but we were biting nails up until the point of launching, of pressing go. So, we were a very small team in terms of actually being able to pull off this site, which you'll see how big it is. But at the same time, I was impressed that we were able to pull off what we did, in other words. And all the music is composed by Lee Strauss. He's a really talented composer in Boston. So, for those of you that have been to the site, what happens if you don't scroll? Nothing. Not a damn thing. Nothing happens. You can't do anything unless you scroll. So we really wanted that. We wanted an active user. We didn't want you to sit back and be told a story. We wanted you to be part of gaining that story and being part of it. And, we made that decision very early on when people were telling us, no, you really need to automate the experience, and we had all these people, but we really believed in the idea that, even though I'm just scrolling, it's part of making things happen, and it's part of gaining that narrative. So what you're seeing right now is the historical sequence. There's 6 sequences in Hollow, and the historical sequence, it goes back to the whole idea of walking into a middle film. This is the only sequence we put you into. After this point, you could choose any sequence. But I felt that this was really important because you needed to understand what it felt like to live in a place that used to have relevance in our national discussion. It used to be a place that fueled our economy, and now is a place that has sort of been left off the national discussion. Population peaking in 1950. How many of you guys have seen October Sky? Yeah, it's Homer Hickam.
I came to the state of West Virginia. There's fewer numbers of my co-residents than any state in the
First
country.
food stamps in America were handed out in McDowell County.
I just feel that I was going to get a great opportunity to run for office as a fellow American in this state. I would not run.
So the idea is that you can go at this at your own pace, going a little fast, just based on our time. I want to make sure we see some other sequences. But for me personally, I just feel like you need to get a good understanding of this population number. It just keeps going down every day. Like, it's gone down since we launched this project. So it was important for this intro to set up the context. And some people said, why didn't you weave it in? Why didn't you make it, as part of the different sequences? And it is a little heavy-handed to put it up front. I will say that. Like, you wouldn't do that specifically with a film. You wouldn't put all the exposition up front. But you can't guarantee that any user is going to find that throughout these different chapters. So we really wanted to make it pretty obvious and make it, exciting to learn about it. Jeff's a great designer and Robert's a really talented developer, so it makes it fun to interact with. The very first person I met in McDowell was a painter his name's Tom Acosta, and he painted this mural. And I don't think that, I wasn't from McDowell, grew up in the county next door, which isn't better off by any means. But I don't think that if I wouldn't have saw him painting a mural in a town where there are literally 3 businesses left in that town, all abandoned, I'm not sure I would have had the same sense of hope for this place. If this guy's going to spend 5 months of his life painting the largest mural in the state on an abandoned building town, there's got to be people with stories here. There's got to be hope here. And it really just sort of opened my eyes to the potential of involving them in it, but also how powerful these stories are and how connected we are to place. So if you're from West Virginia or Appalachia, you call it holler. It's not hollow, by the way. I have to give major credits to our sound designer, Billy Warasnik, who, a lot of the comments that we've gotten from different people is the sound. Like, they just feel like when they, we encourage you to wear headphones, and I'm sure not everybody does, I'm positive not everyone does. But really the sound can help set that place so much more. So you can expect that a site this video heavy is hard to run, so that's why I was saying that. Who tagged photos? Yep. Are there any of these yours?
Yeah. How you feeling?
This one?
No, the one with the black. How you feeling?
Oh! Why did you tag this? Home.
I don't know, because I think that's, when you're going back home, you're always thinking about that. I don't know.
How you feeling?
How you feeling? I don't know.
Where'd you take this?
Subway.
Oh, cool. Nice. Alright, whose photo is this?
That's mine.
Where's it from?
Missouri.
Nice. Looks like West Virginia.
Yeah. Just flatter.
And why does is Missouri your home?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Well, I will have you add to our database here in a minute, because I assume you were, how old when you left Missouri?
18.
Yeah, okay, you're perfect. Who's this? It's a beautiful photo. Sandy and Gab having a chat on the grass. Where's this from?
That's my backyard.
That's awesome. Backyard in New York. Not really?
No,
Long Island. It's beautiful. What about this? This is great.
That's my truck.
That's awesome. I love cats and dogs. Cats and dogs dominate all of Holy Awesome. Because my dog is like, when they greet you, it's home. Whose is this? Yours? Yeah. Thank you for uploading. And then we have a couple more. What's this? Whose is this? Yeah.
It's Geneva, Switzerland. It's a landmark, and you can see it from the sky.
Are you from Switzerland? That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing all those. I think it's cool the way we all define home. Home is not always a place. Home is sometimes a feeling, sometimes it's a smell, sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a cat. But I think that this guy defines home really well, and I'd like to show this. One of the things I will note before we show it is that you can see right here we've locked certain content. That game element we've added is simply to encourage a number of reasons, but the primary reason is to encourage you to actually immerse yourself into the content, to not only lean forward in the experience of scrolling and seeing these environments, interacting with them, but to lean back for a second and actually listen to someone. So after you listen to Alan, you get access to his photographs. He's a photographer and bluegrass musician. So.
Under that crosswalk. There's a yearning inside me to create something out of wood, or create a song, or create a beautiful photograph. I hear these old songs that people have written about where I live, and it just puts a cold chill up my spine. And I know that's just it's down in my soul, you know. there's things that I remember from my childhood that I wish somebody had taken a picture of. That kind of inspired me then. I felt that somebody ought to document this area now. So that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years at least. I've been trying to document the area where I live in photographs. I've still got so much more to do though, you know, so many more places to go. I've always been around music ever since I can remember, even before I got interested in it. My daddy was a musician, and his family before him were musicians. Dad was a real champion fiddle player. He won ribbons playing the fiddle. He didn't play bluegrass fiddle, he played old-time fiddle, and there is a difference. I write a lot of songs, and I feel compelled to write about this area. But it's easy to write about something that you love, you know. I don't believe that it'll ever be like it was when I was a kid. I really don't believe that. Or in my lifetime anyway, when coal was king. You go from 100,000 people down to 22,000 people. Now when I look down the street in Welch, you don't see anybody. It's almost like a ghost town. That doesn't make me love this place any less. It's just, it's my home, and I love these mountains. I would never be satisfied anywhere else. Right next to that trail up there. Got a butterfly on there. I could be in Florida, or I could be in Columbus, Ohio, but home is where my heart is, and my heart is right here in McDowell County.
So obviously that first portrait is about home. Obviously. But at that point, did you guys see the thing at the bottom? It said item unlocked. So now you have access to his photographs. And Alan has photographed areas in McDowell that don't exist anymore. So he's been doing this for several years. And just the other day, actually, he posted in the community updates page. Actually, I don't think he's posted it yet. But right here you can see, this is the tool we built for them. So these are the people that are contributing, that are throughout the documentary, and these are different initiatives that they can contribute to. These are your photos, the Holler Home thing. And then we worked with Sunlight Foundation to provide government transparency tools to provide the more based on not really your user experience, but the community's experience, to know what their senators and delegates are talking about in Washington. How are we doing on time? 5 minutes? I'm going to keep scrolling. I mentioned community content, and it's treated in two different ways in Holo. So sometimes it's embedded within the sequence, so it's full screen and treated the same way. The longer pieces they shot, which range from a minute to 2 minutes, are accessed this way. And this is a really awesome piece. Before I show it, I want to say something quickly about it. Sean Penn Morton and Stephanie, who are in the background of this, they're not from West Virginia. They're from North Carolina, actually. And Sean's pretty fiery and was really excited to take out the camera and show all the really terrible things that are going on. He shot footage that's really just mind-blowing, that's in the documentary, about all the abandoned buildings and houses and how sort of they're posing a threat to the whole community. But then at the end of the day, he went home and he shot this. After he shot, the abandoned buildings, he shot the dumps, he shot the sewage going into the creeks, all these like really terrible things that they've been struggling with forever. He went home and he shot this, and I thought it was just really awesome. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because I feel like that's really important to understand the power a camera has when you give it to a resident who doesn't have filmmaking training. They're not even thinking about cinematography, they're thinking about audio or anything. They're really capturing story in its most raw form. And it's so beautiful. And these portraits that the community shot, I could have never captured this stuff. And it's my favorite part of Hollow. And so in all this, I wrote behind the scenes, basically saying what I just told you. Because I just feel like it's easy for a viewer to just take the stuff for granted and think it's just silly and shot on a whim. But if you look at his camera log, it really took him a long time to come around and shoot his daughter at home and come to the reason of why he was shooting this stuff. So I'll just show a minute of it and then we'll move on.
One of the reasons I'm trying to get so involved is right here. We've got a brand new baby girl. We call her Half Pint. Her real name is Jessica Elizabeth. And she don't talk, but we can make her make some faces. What you doing, Half Pint? Huh? What you doing? Yeah, that's definitely one of the main reasons. Trying to get involved and improve our communities is for this little girl right here. And not just her, of course, for all of the little ones coming up. And, you know, they need a future around here.
So, and then if you want to learn about Sean Stephanie, of course, you can go to their portrait. I keep scrolling. You guys know what flat foot dancing is? Yeah? Nice. This is community shot footage. So this is, sorry, this is the example where it's embedded within the site, and then we just give a credit to the community members that shot it. And that's the Veterans Day Parade, which is the longest Veterans Day Parade in the country, actually. This is probably my favorite portrait, is because I honestly feel like this kid is me in a lot of ways. He grew up in this place. He left this place this year, went to college actually, and wants to go into filmmaking. And he's the first person I had interviewed, and I wish I would have found more kids like him. But I went to interior Missouri stuff. So before I do that though, throughout Hollow there's different data visualizations. Not all of them are as interactive as this one, but some of them talk about the coal production, coal fatalities. Some of them talk about health data, so the different, obesity rates and those different things. But it was really important for us to put data next to a story, so the qualitative and quantitative next to each other, because for so many years and decades, many places are defined by the data that haunts them, and the data is not flattering. So, highest teen pregnancy rate, highest dropout rate, highest poverty rates, all these things. So we really wanted to give people a broader perspective of why that is. Why does that exist in those places? So this one is a little different, that we're asking the user to add their story to our data of where are you going for opportunity. So, what's your hometown?
West Plains, Missouri.
West Plains. And you move here first?
Actually, I went to Germany first.
Where?
In Germany.
Oh, cool. What town?
Schmalkalden.
Okay, let's do New York. Can I do Manhattan? Does that work? I know New York is kind of weird. And how old were you when you came to New York?
When I came here, I was 21.
Yeah, New York's a little weird in that.
I think Russ fits in work.
Did he? Okay, nice, yeah. So, we've had, I think, like 60,000 or so unique viewers of the site New York, but we've only had 317 submit to this. So not everybody that comes to this submits to this. It's really if you're if this is relevant to you. So you're the only user from Howell County, which is Missouri, I assume, and you travel to New York, and you can really see a majority of our users obviously relate to this West Virginia area, which is right here, and are spreading all across the country. So these are all West Virginia counties. And then we go to travel too. Let me see the spread. We do have a lot of international submissions, but it's cool because it's sort of just, and for me, not being political or anything, but it sort of puts a little bit of pressure to see the amount of on our governors and the people making the decisions statewide, and not just statewide but nationwide, of you've got young people leaving, and what are you doing about it? And you're not providing any opportunities for us to return back. Coal is not our future, and I'm not going to have a career in coal mining. So what are you going to do to provide it? So for me, this is a pretty powerful data visualization that really shows that. So you're one of 13 out of 317 that have traveled to New York County, though. New York County? New York?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was New York County.
It is. Kings County, Brooklyn, New York
Kings
County.
County is what we get a lot. A lot of
That's
people have gone to
Brooklyn.
Kings County. Okay. Okay, got it.
What framework did you use for the data viz? What tech framework? Is it like D3 or processing?
Yeah,
What did we use?
he used D3.
Yeah, we used D3.
Yeah. Well, I know because Russ had written a little piece about it. Yeah. Yeah, we can start taking questions, and I'll
Cool.
just keep clicking through.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
I do actually. So for the Tribeca Film Fund, did you already start feeling what was the process of getting the funding? Did you already start the project before you went for it, or did you come to
Yeah.
the idea?
I applied in March, and I was already halfway through or more production before we found out we were finalists. And then we were asked to submit an update. So at that point, I had filmed quite a bit. So I sent them an updated version of like some videos. And at that point, I'd also had a designer on the team. So he actually mapped out some really nice early wireframes, which it didn't end up, looking like it. But at least we had, I had moved forward. And when I submitted to Tribeca, I said, never hear from them, but it's worth a try.
Yeah.
So it was good that I didn't just sit back and not do anything at the point. I was determined to make the project happen, whether we had the funding or not. So it would have just been scaled down.
Okay. Oh,
I saw that you guys used Kickstarter at some point. Was that before or after you were funded by Tribeca?
Yeah, so that probably was part of your question too. We raised like $29,000 on Kickstarter in April. It was before Tribeca. And the cool thing about Kickstarter with this project, more so than I've used Kickstarter for 3 other projects, but the cool thing with this is that for me, I really didn't realize how to tap into the community of like West Virginia expats and other people that have left regions, and like our main backers were people that had left, and so it created an audience already for the project. So
To me, the most fabulous part about this, aside from the heart behind the story that you told, is this amazing interface. This is, sometimes the techniques, like the one you showed with the baby, where you had video and still images layered on there in a way that really does remind me. You see it in now as kind of convention in documentary film, where people will. I think Ken Burns had a lot to do with how you utilize stills and make them, more engaging and, in a sense, alive. Can you tell us a little technically or inspirationally how this user interface design came about?
Well, I had certain scenes in mind, so the whole inspiration for the design really came about from this rocket thing was totally Jeff. Like if you like that, that's not me.
It's
Right.
like there's so many little gems just without even seeing the story. It's just like a...
Well, we wanted you to be able to literally just be able to close your ears and scroll through this and be told some story. You may not get it all, but at least you're put in a place and you're being told a story. And I think the main inspiration was I shot so much, but I had favorites. And I knew that not all of it would make it in. So I sort of cut scenes, or I did a lot of screenshots and sent them to Jeff, our designer, and was like, how can we incorporate this in? But really, we all thought of it as sort of like a choreography of images. So at what point does it make sense for like a person's face to, like this golf cart scene right here, they're riding a golf cart. We wanted it to come in at the same time that these people coming in and the coal truck were driving away, or the little man truck were driving away. So it was just like this constant choreographed, curated experience that things were constantly moving and changing. We didn't want you to ever feel like you were questioning what you were doing. So a lot of the image-driven design is just based on me choosing like my favorite moments and also handing over my raw footage to Jeff, our designer, and being like, I don't know what to do with this sequence. What can you make out of it?
But it's not playing as a video,
No.
or is it?
No.
Well,
I mean-
some of the loops are videos.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell when they're videos, but those pieces where stills are layered over the top, is it Flash or?
No, it's HTML5.
HTML5?
Yeah.
It's just
So the style that they call it, it's called, you
Parallax.
see it in, it's called Parallax. You'll see it in other websites too.
Parallax?
Thank you.
The
Yeah.
idea of like depth of.
Yeah, we're not the first to do.
No, but
the-
there's just so much of it that it really
Right.
is a defining element of the experience, even if you never choose to click on the videos.
Right.
It's just, in fact, it's so much fun that you want to keep doing it. I find myself wanting to scroll.
Right. We wanted you to feel like an explorer, sort of, more than
Great.
anything.
Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a good way to ask this question. First of all, I think what you've done is visually quite stunning and very inventive. I think it's great. The question I have is, what is the, if you were to crystallize the emotional intent of this piece to an audience, let's say not the audience who lives there, but the audience outside of there, I'm trying to get an understanding what that is, because I know that if you do a linear documentary, you're telling a story in part sometimes to have action take place, to say these conditions are bad, they should be improved, therefore X. And I'm not quite sensing what the emotional intent of this, because it seems on one hand it's about documenting something that's dying and will be dying, and there's not much we can do about it. And on the other hand, it's trying to help people who are there kind of see themselves in a new light and maybe take some action. And that's where I'm just trying to understand how you see all that.
Yeah. So I think the big question, or the big answer to that is, while there's not an obvious story being told, if you sit down with each sequence, you're brought to an arc at every chapter.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning of this chapter starts with the mayor being murdered. I knew this mayor very well. And there's not that there's a resolution to the fact that he was murdered, and the fact that the reason he was murdered was because he was murdered by his daughter-in-law to buy drugs. And we're not asking you to take action on that, but we're asking you to acknowledge the fact that these are issues all across the nation. So I think the emotional story, it really comes into recognition. For me, I think it's exciting to say that yes, this is cool technology and this is designed really well. But at the heart of all these, if you actually listen to the stories, you can walk away with a totally different experience than the guy in front of you. And that's really important to me. And we do have call to actions throughout. So if you want to help fund the community garden, but really my idea for the change doesn't require you to make change. It is an incentive for the locals. So since we've left, a lot of changes happened, and they, this is really sort of rebranded their community for them, and it's sort of opened their eyes to the fact that we're doing presentations in New York about their community, and that's sort of life-changing for them to think that people are watching them. So that local impact is more important for me than anything. Yeah, one of the things.
So we have time for one more question. Karen?
I just want to say that what I feel like, which is happening here, which is really wonderful, is that you found a way to say this is the way things is. This is the way things are. Here's enough background to understand them. All you need to know is this is. It's like I feel like documentary so much, and I'm asking if you feel the same. It's gotten all the funding has gotten so geared towards impact,
Right.
result measurement. It's like social justice, blah blah blah. It's very hard to raise money to just make a movie that is not got a tweet at the end.
Right.
And I feel like, do you feel like it was easier to just make the movie that you wanted to make? Things as they are, good, bad, indifferent, I love them, in this form than you do in a linear film?
Yeah, I think so. I think that this form allowed me to. I really wanted to be apolitical in everything. I put it's so much to the point that I put the people that are against strip mining right next to the people that are working on a strip mining site. Because this form allowed me to do that. But linear form wouldn't allow me to do that. And so it's not about whether I want mountaintop removal to stop or I want the creek to be cleaned up. It's about presenting the stories the way they are and not having an agenda. And yeah, I think that this form allowed me, I mean, especially with data and real storytelling, so much of the data is manipulated and so many of the stories are manipulated, and we were able to just say how it is. And that in and of itself has had a huge impact on the community there. So, yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Cool.
Thank you so much. I think
It's a good segue. I'm here to talk about fan-centric media, and specifically a little bit about my company that I work with, but I wanted to tell you a little about myself first. I run a consulting practice in Los Angeles. I myself am a movie geek. I was a journalist. I've been a filmmaker, documentary films as well, a marketer, a strategist, and what I termed some time ago an interactivist. Most of the last 20 plus years I was at the American Film Institute, where I was, when I left 3 years ago, I was Senior Vice President of Media and Technology, and I created a bunch of programs that were designed to help other people make the transition from analog to digital. So in the big program we ran was the Digital Content Lab, and I know some of you from that era. We incubated more than 95 interactive applications with more than 1,000 companies. So I've been around the block a few times, and now I'm able to do it on my own. Specifically here to talk about THEATRICS, which is a client I've been working with for the last year, and it's really an interesting platform. We've made the transition, and I'll tell you a little story about it as we go along. But I like to call this fan-powered storytelling. This is a platform that's designed to help you make it easy for your passionate fans to co-create a new kind of collaborative online story experience. So really, you see the statistics somebody mentioned earlier about you have to tell a story that has a tweet at the end. And, you see these kinds of stats, and the people in buildings like this live by them now, where, the popular brands that are on these various social platforms and Instagram and so forth. But this came out, last month. I love this because the future of storytelling is people who want to befriend characters that influence their decisions. As a junkie, we were talking about it earlier for Breaking Bad, I can tell you I'm very much in that boat. I want something to happen really bad to Walt, and so I think this is a linear. He was my friend, but we changed. If you want to get into that afterwards, I'll talk about it. But it's a good question to ask when you're talking about your own project. How fan-centric is your media? We talk about it as digital, of course, because, for the last, 25, 30 years, we've seen this migration first on the tools level and then on the consumer level of almost all content actually being forms of digital media. It's a series of ones and zeros. So that doesn't tell you very much, although sometimes it isn't digital if you're doing ARGs or something that happens in the live world. We also talk a lot and hear a lot, especially now with second screen revolution and multi-platform. We use the transmedia word in some circles, and others not so much. But the idea that a story can live or start on one and move to another, and you use your phone and you use various kinds of devices to engage the user in the story that you're telling, whether there's a mothership or whether they're all equally powerful. Is that a word? Of course, we talk about it as interactive, and I like to think about it as interactivity being high or low. I mean, how interactive is it when you like somebody's Facebook page? Not very. Or when you tweet something, or when you tag it and save it on your Pinterest board. But it is interactive. I mean, it is a user-generated piece of engagement with the content. All the way to what I'm talking about today, where users can create characters and actually drive the story forward and change the outcome of the story in real time, with co-creating with the story showrunner. I think social is an attribute that we have to, embed in almost everything we do. How shareable is the stuff that you're doing? Is it only shareable within the context of the container that you've created, or is it, this is to me the primary reason why YouTube won in the early days of video, was because they made it embeddable. And you consume most of your YouTube video someplace else. So it's a very critical element of any kind of fan-centric media, because you can't tell people to come to your destination. You have to find where they are. And then I would call another attribute media density. Video is I think the densest, although some might argue that, say, gameplay would be another example of it. On the other side of it, it can be very light. It can be, tags, words, blog posts, ideas, pictures. There's a range of density. And then I would say the final one is the context. A lot of stuff that is fan-centric doesn't really have a story context. It doesn't really have a container that connects what you're doing with what other fans doing. Your interactivity, like for example on Facebook, is part of a flow. I mean, the thing about, we used to call them when they first came out, live streams, is you have to stand on the brook and watch the stream go by. Who wants to watch 24 hours a day, so you miss stuff. Fan-centric media then is media where the fans co-create with the author. They contribute their own content, whether it's video, images, text. It's media where they can be followed or they can follow other people. So it's fundamentally and endemically social. And the context of a story, or if you want to say a brand experience, is always present. And so in other words, there's a container where the story contains what you're doing. And finally, it's shareable across many platforms. So, some early examples when I would look and try to find things where the attributes always synced up, some were there and some weren't. If you did that little thing as a grid, this of course is Second Life. So there's a very high degree of interactivity, but it's completely contained inside of the story world that you're in. You don't see a lot of tweets about what I just did, in my Second Life thing. It's a world in and of its own. This is another example where we slice it a different way. So it was, I think, one of the most inspiring early examples of storytelling, certainly on YouTube. In fact, most people didn't realize that it was a story showrunner creating a show like any other show and hiring actors and casting people to perform in this thing. So most people treated it as if somebody was sharing these horrendous things in their lives, and they reacted to it using video. Part of the problem with this is that it was kind of randomized, and the story container was inside of all of YouTube. And so, it had some of the attributes, but not all of them. And also, there was no way for the showrunner to shape the experience that the end user who wasn't performing might have. Fast forwarding a little bit, and this is a little bit more contemporary. This is a screen grab of the first story that was on the Rides platform, which was the late lamented Fourth Wall Studios, and Rides still exists, and I think it'll come back around. The reason I put it on there is because they're touting an immersive experience that lets you experience this story using video, phone calls, text messages, and emails. So there's across many platforms, but guess what? It's very low density. You're not creating anything. You're experiencing what they've created in a sequential way. Yes. So that's all a backdrop for what we're trying to do with THEATRICS. So this is an interactive online storytelling platform that supports video, text, and images. We think it's a new form of online video experience where the fans truly co-create. It's a different kind of user-generated content because the format gives the creator a full suite of tools and a high degree of control and interactivity with your users. And there's a novel end-user experience that is social, immersive, performance-based, and game-like. I'll show you a little bit more. But first, just to make it clear, this is primarily aimed at storytellers, but we're discovering that it's a container that can be used by lots of other people, companies, brands, actually individual consumers. So it all started with a story experience called Beckenfield, which was the proof of concept, which became in fact the proof of concept for the platform. The originators, 3 co-founders, 1 actor, 1 video producer, and 1 a business guy in Houston, Texas, started this, had this idea of creating a story where fans could actually perform in their story world. And they kind of built a platform to support the idea of the story that they had to tell. And I encountered it and stumbled along. In fact, Chris Dorr published my piece on the Tribeca Future of Film, just as a blogger who was interested in checking out these kinds of things. And lo and behold, they wound up hiring me because what they discovered, not unlike a lot of people, which is very difficult to create a story world where it's a single destination. And so, Beckenfield.com was this really cool thing, and several thousand people created accounts and performed and acted, and the actual consumption of it flatlined. They just, there was no, even they could spend an endless amount of money buying, cross-promotion on Facebook and Google AdWords and all that kind of stuff, and they couldn't really, and I came to it and I said, you're doing it backwards. You've got a great platform for storytellers that already have an audience. They're called television. Why don't we see whether we can take what you're doing and offer it to people who are already entertaining people and offer a deeper dimension to the experience that those people can have with it. And that's what they hired me to do. And we closed our first deal with USA Networks and NBC Universal and launched in February the social sector, which is still running on the THEATRICS platform, and you can play it. It's a play-along game that was an 8-week online only mystery in the story world of Sight. These 2 goofy guys that do these detective stuff, and you can help them solve the crime. And they did one without us, the first season called #Killers, and then the second season they added the THEATRICS dimension that allowed video. So the thing in the bottom there, the theory wall. So if you had a theory about which of the bad guys was the killer, you could upload the video and help Sean and Gus solve the problem. And if your video was engaging enough, it could be brought into the mainstream of the whole story. So that was part of that experience, and it was fun. That was kind of a you can see it's a custom experience. It does not look like any of the others because they paid a lot more money than probably other people will. In April, we launched what we call the self-service version of the platform in beta. I will come back to this, but this is your open invitation to think of this as a demonstration of what you might be able to do, or some inspiration for what you may be able to do. During the beta, you can log on to theatrics.com and open an account and create a show without cost right now, and the support for the length of the show. So, this is a free open beta that you and anybody you know is welcome to do. Whether you wind up getting the custom features and whatever is kind of dependent on how good your ideas are. To wit, so you've probably heard of Lizzie Bennett's Diaries. Mike mentioned it. Won one of the Emmys on Sunday. They had done this amazing Kickstarter campaign to create they wanted to raise like 80 or 90 grand to do a DVD set of the Lizzie shows, which was already a multi-platform show, but there was a lot of video, and it was kind of scattered all over the web. Some of it was embedded in Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and so forth. So they raised nearly $400,000 in 10 days from their fan base, 200,000 Facebook subscribers, 38 million video views on YouTube alone. And they offered to fans with the extra money a summer replacement series, which was another Jane Austen adaptation called Welcome to Sanditon, which is an unfinished novel posthumously published and written by Jane Austen in 1860-something. And so they updated the trope, if you will, for their idea was that William Darcy's sister, Gigi, is in charge of the beta test of the software that his company, Pemberley Digital, was releasing, and it was being tested in this town called Sanditon. And the THEATRICS portal was the beta site for you to test it. And of course, complications ensue. So instead of offering a single pre-taped story that was kind of in the mode of Lonely Girl 15, actually, talking to the camera in a confessional diary format, that was the way Lizzie Bennett was done. Well, this time they did on Tuesday one of those, and on Thursday an edited version of the highlights of the stuff that was generated through the THEATRICS platform. Because one of the features of the platform is that we have either individually or we can automate it, downloads of all the videos that your users deliver to you, so you can edit it. And we're now in discussions with some people to actually offer an editing tool on the platform as well, so the users can do that. But the point is that it becomes an acquisition tool. This is another site. It's still running. It's called Aurelia, Edge of Darkness. It's a steampunk adventure starring you. And this is an example of a completely new sort of format that she created. This is a woman in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who had written a serialized novel about this world. And she discovered our beta platform, and we looked at that and said, there's something here. A, it's steampunk, so there's fans out there. But B, there is the possibility for a format other than direct address in the camera, like you have with the Lonely Girl model. And I'll show you a trailer.
Aurelia is unique.
I have enjoyed being part of Aurelia. It makes you feel like a child again.
Aurelia. Once this land was a paradise of life and light, but then in the skies poured acid rain, and darkness fell. To escape, humankind fled to a central mountain and built themselves a city. A city founded on science, run by inventors, and powered by steam.
I love steampunk, I love Victorian, I love sci-fi, and this is just a fantastic meld of all of those things.
It doesn't just involve one person's creativity, but the creativity of every single person who gets themselves involved in it.
The future lies in your hands. As a citizen of Aurelia, you can bring the city to life and help tell its collective story.
It's audience participation. It's that line between the company and the audience. That line becomes blurred.
It's fresh, it's new.
It's not just me posting the video. It's me living in a world where other people live and interact.
It is such a new way of telling a story.
Watch and respond to other actors' performances. New calls to action will invite you to advance the story through your character. No auditions, no scripts. Will the citizens of Aurelia find a way to restore their future? Or will the light go out once and for all? The choice is yours.
So that gives you a little feeling for it. I have a few more examples, and I'll run through a quick explanation of how you would set up a show. This is a site for Bomb It 2, which is John Reese's newest film, sequel to Bomb It. I actually just met with him right beforehand. We were talking about a couple of other projects too. This one, we may enlist, I'll probably be emailing Mike and everybody, along with all the other Transmedia folk around the country. This is a project from Atlanta. The principal creative is a guy named Hank Blumenthal, who used to work in town here. You probably know him from, he worked for, forget the name of the agency. And he's been doing his PhD and sort of exploring transmedia tools. He's created this elaborate story world around the ghost clubs. And if you haven't heard, this is a big deal. Apparently there are people out there. I discovered one of them is Kara Swisher. How lucky can you get? I mean, she tweeted on Friday night, "Life is good. Dinner, wine, and the ghost club." And I thought, no shit. Front page of the Wall Street Journal. But there are people who go out on these ghosting expeditions, and they have an app, a series of webisodes, a feature, and this is all going to basically launch in early October as a run-up to Halloween, with a promotion for the VOD download and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in ghost clubs, watch THEATRICS and we'll clue you in. We're working with Wikia, which is the commercial side of the Wiki platform. It's 65 million monthly uniques, 300,000 fan communities. It's an awesome set of communities of types of fans, and we're launching with them at New York Comic Con a cosplay contest online. So people who, for those of you who are not familiar, I would have been one of those a few weeks ago. People dress up like their favorite characters and they go to Comic Con. We've all seen that on the news. But apparently they do it around the house because they can dress up and get in front of their camera and perform. Why not? Yeah, and why not? Exactly. So we're not quite sure what all the rules are going to be in terms of, but you too can enter if you're a cosplayer, and we hope that you will. But more than that, we offer this invitation to you that you begin a co-creation experience with your fans for your show during THEATRICS Open Beta Test period. I mean, there are lots of use cases, and this is the primary reason why it's still a beta test, because you know, I've given you some examples of some story-based things, but we still are. We've been working with some people, but we haven't cracked the code to figure out how, for example, you might use THEATRICS as a tool for researching documentary. You've sort of done your own version of this, and then taken the video that you yourselves or your subjects have captured and integrated into an end-user experience that's artistic and exquisite. But even before you get to the point of deciding what you're going to do with the footage, if you're the typical documentary producer, you may be doing a story like, for example, I was an Army brat, and I'd like to do a story about Army brats. To find the right subjects, and particularly people who are not of my age cohort, yes, I could put a call for out on Facebook and hopefully get some stuff, but I would have the ability to create a container and allow a community to develop prior to the production of the film. A lot of people that we're talking to, particularly at the network level, like the idea of a backstory or an alternate story that will live inside a contained story world that we create in parallel with the main story that might be on TV or as a motion picture. We've talked to folks about using this as a casting device, either for actors or for subjects in a documentary for casting. I've talked about contests and competitions, also in-character vlogs or blogs. So the ability to have the characters that appear in another of your media create a contained vlogging world where you have multiple characters and you can find them all. It's just an easier way to build this up and to allow some of your fans to do the same. And then if you're in the commercial world, brand ambassadorship is something that is a big world. I'm not going to go through a lot of detail because I think I've covered it, except to point out here, the home page, theatrics.com, you see the big green button in the middle? That's all you have to do. Try THEATRICS now. It'll bring you to a sign-in page. You can create an account instantly with your Facebook sign-in or create your own username and password with your email address. And that'll immediately take you to a dashboard. You can see here that at least at this point when I made the slide, I had some shows that I was following, but I hadn't made my own show. So with a simple click of the button, I add my new show, and it takes me to a wizard, which the first page of the wizard is an overview. And it's a pretty simple thing, 5 steps. I can just go ahead and put a title and select a genre and power through the wizard very fast, and I have the container available that I can populate later. For example, this is what happened with Aurelia. So I come back to it partially because when I did this presentation, they had just gone live, but this shows you that you can have the videos like the one I just showed you, or you can have, they did a map. They have a lot of deep story material, but you can see that everybody that comes to that homepage will see the call to action, the tools that they can use to create their own content if they're following the show, the information about what you're looking at. In this case, it's a city map. Every single page has got deep embedded links to virtually all the major social networks if you click share. There's also that star button there. We call it cheer. We can rebrand it if you want to call it vote, but there's a voting engine, and there are also badges. So there's points and badges embedded in it. You can see that what we built into this is that when your viewer goes to the show for the first time, if they haven't created an account or if they just found it and you've like, let's say, started promoting it and they go there, they get a default setting, they get the getting started page, and they see that very first introductory video, which is very easy to tag which one you want to be the introductory video. The whole thing is, this is the about the show. This is all entirely populated by the database I showed you earlier. You upload the image and all of the links and so forth. But this is the other piece, and then I'll finish up for questions. Everything is really driven by what we call personas, which is really channels. So if you have a character-driven story, you can create personas as a showrunner. So you can have, we're working with a publisher right now that has a family story with 8 characters, and they can each have their own channel, and they can populate content and backstory on those characters, but all of your viewers can create their own persona. You can create as many as you want. They can only create one per show. So if you have created a story world, it's the haunted house or whatever it might be, and you want your fan to come in there, they have to commit if they want to perform. They have to decide, and so they have an account, but they can have a character in your show and another one in your show and another one in your show. So it's basically a performance-based persona. All of these are typical elements in the dashboard. You can see that there's feature, there's popular, there's recent, and this is kind of an initiative one. Because you can follow any of these characters, my experience of your story world might be different than your experience of the story world, very much the same as what you mentioned, so that if I've decided to follow 15 characters, I go to, when I log in, I see the catch-up button, I click there, and it displays all of the videos that have been created since the last time I logged in for the people I'm following. So some people will go just to the catch-up thing, and or they might go to the featured ones, which are the ones that the showrunner has decided to feature. There's a couple pages filled with features on the back end. I don't really have time to go into all of them, but they're fairly simple to use. If you've used a project management tool, you can use THEATRICS, pretty simple. There's an admin panel in the back end for you. You can look at your metrics and your statistics and users. You didn't do this. If there are any real geeks here, it's all runs on Amazon, so it's as robust as Netflix, and the video latency is really good with Fiddler. If you did insist on another single sign-on back-end integration, we can all do the customization for you if you're, a commercial partner, and then for the real geeks. But I'll assume that you don't want to study our server farm diagram.
Go back there.
That's for you. I knew you'd be here.
Come on.
You're taking, I know she's doing the Google Glass, so go
Totally,
ahead.
I'm covering this entire
Please reach out to me during the rest of the presentation or afterwards. I love to talk to you and hear your ideas. And again, I reiterate, this is an open call for anybody to use THEATRICS, and I think the minute you get into building your story, you will have questions, and I'm available to help you. That's my job.
Cool. So do we have any questions?
When it's not free, how expensive is it? Do you take any IP, do you claim any IP rights, and is the interface, the visual interface to the user customizable?
The first question we don't know yet. We'll, I think, begin
Order
to
of magnitude?
well, the custom jobs where we have a lot of engineering, there's a setup fee and a monthly charge, and it's probably I would say roughly equivalent to most of the these kinds of social platforms. Thousands, not tens of thousands a month. For the probably the self-service model, it'll be a freemium, so there'll be a minimum uncustomizable version, additional features and storage and capacity for the middle level, and then there'll be a higher end with custom URLs and the custom features that you mentioned that you probably want. And I guess it'll be probably free $10 a month and $30 a month. I don't know. We'll test, but that's probably if indeed the self-service model works, which we haven't really established yet. That's probably what we're looking at. It's something like Squarespace as a model, if you are familiar with it. And we right now almost all the customization is being done manually. It's not built in, but that's on the roadmap, depending on how popular different features are.
Is it customizable by the user?
Pardon me?
Is the interface customizable by the user?
Not yet. No. The probably color scheme and background uploads, kind of somewhat plug and play features will be added. When you're getting into moving things around and creating more elaborate designs, that will probably be custom. I think that's my guess. I can't say for sure.
And IP?
We don't have any plans to own it. We want to be a platform play and not a publisher. But that could change too. That's why it's still in beta. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure. If you were to use this as a research tool for documentary, I'm reminded of a movie called, it was a Japanese film, and he made a film based on what is the one thing you would want to remember in your next life. When you die, you can only remember, you have one memory. And he asked this of all these old people and wrote a script. So if you were to do something like that, so you have all these people answering one question, what in a situation like this is your release situation? Is your ownership situation? Like if you were to download all those, put them in a movie, and post it somewhere where you're paying money for it, is there any built-in
Rights management.
rights management?
Well, basically when you create an account and upload the video, it's very similar to the same terms of service that you sign with YouTube. The difference is that YouTube doesn't have that. It's not a dual layer. It's not a 3-layered system. It is, but it isn't. In other words, I have a deal with YouTube, even directly. Whereas if you were to do this and I was the end user, I would have a deal with you as well as THEATRICS. And so I think, generally speaking, the user waives their rights by creating this content, and you have the right to exploit it. But my guess is that, certainly with Sanditon, they were excerpted in compilations and people were perfectly happy, but it wasn't really a big moneymaker, so you raise an interesting question.
There's always that one that suddenly...
Yeah.
But you're saying, Nick, that with terms of service, the minute you say I agree, potentially in your terms of service, you just cover all that.
Yeah, and
so you're covered.
And if there were utilizations at the back end that you anticipated that we didn't have covered, we could change the terms of service to meet your needs. We've done that twice already. Because, again, we're in beta, so we're trying to figure these things out. What would you need? What do you need?
Well, if I were to, say, put up a question, have this be a way of people performing or responding to that question, then I were to take that, use that material in a documentary that went on something that has deliverables.
Paid you a license fee.
PBS. Then I have to hand them deliverables of releases for everybody who's in the movie. Does the terms of service cover? This is getting into the weeds, and I can talk to you afterwards. But as this arena moves into product in this way, the issue of ownership and authorship starts to be...
Well, in the whole UGC area, a lot of times also in the fictional side, the show networks will be concerned that somehow a story idea originates with an audience member and then somebody grabs it and it shows up in a WGA script. And but look, I had an upload that was so there are some dimensions that depend on the final end use, and I think a lot of this depends upon the intention of the creator in terms of what they're going to do with it. And sometimes where the problems come in is that the intentions aren't clear initially, and so you wind up after the fact trying to fix it when suddenly they notice that you just sold something to Comcast and they don't want to settle. So you want to do it all up front.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Nick. So again, Nick will be around afterwards.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Jonathan Levitt, as Mike said, and I'm going to talk to you today for 5 minutes about Reality Check Interactive. I'm primarily a documentary filmmaker, but this new project that we've had, Follow the Leader, that we've released over the last year and a half, basically, sort of led me into becoming an interactive producer. So this is our first Reality Check Interactive performance, which was about 1 year ago on the night of the second presidential debate. I'm going to start with a little bit of a sort of demo of what we do on the night, and give you a little bit about the process first of what Reality Check Interactive is. It's essentially a format or process for an episodic interactive presentation, if you will, of a documentary. So we break feature-length, non-judgmental documentaries into sections, and then we have an interactive voting module in between each of those sections. And the first way that we did this was with these boardroom keypads that look like they're from about 30 years ago, because they basically are. But I, as a documentary filmmaker, I sort of, I'm quite old school, and I think a lot of the stuff that's going on in the transmedia world is, it feels sort of a little gimmicky to me, even though I'm excited about everything I see when I come here every month. So I wanted to sort of go back in time and use this technology. Now we're actually moving it into another area, as I'll tell you in a minute. But basically we start our events with a question and an induction into Reality Check. So, can I see a show of hands? How many people have you ever lied to your mother or your father?
Never. Definitely.
Okay. Okay. So we're a relatively honest crowd. I'm usually not the facilitator at our events, but we start that way, and we go. Basically, we're showing that we want everyone to be honest, because of course the answer is yes, as somebody said, I think, over there. We basically do an induction where, in a fun way, we get everyone's demographic information input into, basically tied to these keypads. And what we're doing now is putting it into an app. So moving on, because I feel like I'm already halfway through my time. Essentially, what we do in the film is let people respond to the characters and the characters' views and current events that are relevant to those characters' views. Obviously, it's very relevant to a particular pilot project. And my last feature documentary, called Follow the Leader, is basically a coming-of-age story about 3 teenage boys who want to be president. So the process of Reality Check sort of takes all the viewers on or participants, as we like to refer to them, as basically we take people on a coming-of-age journey where they rediscover their political beliefs. So we've done these as live events, but they're rather cost prohibitive. So what we're doing now is we're basically putting it into an iOS app. So it's going to be on iPhones and iPads. And doing that really answers a few other questions that we've found as we've gone along the way over the last year of developing Reality Check Interactive, or Reality Check Follow the Leader Interactive, as we like to call it. So, we basically feel that there's a decreased, collective film experience that's going on, a decreased attention span, and a decreased shared usage of the same public media a lot of the time. So Reality Check is really addressing these issues that we have in our culture by bringing people together for a shared experience. And in real time, when people respond to, if I had more time, I'd do a little bit of a demo, but in real time, we ask people questions about, did you think that comment was covertly racist? and we'll get people's answers to that question along a scale, and then people will be able to see in real time how answers to that question break down across various demographic lines, and we also have judgments about how people think they're going to break down. So, essentially you get a reality check, if you will, on what people really think. And then we prime issues that are going to come up in the next episode, which the episodes of the film are linear, and it does exist as a regular linear feature. But we're basically priming, what we want people to, or what we know is coming in the next section. And it can be viewed as essentially, 1 minute? Okay. Essentially, they can view one episode at a time, participate. It's something that like families can participate in over the dinner table 1 day a week for a week, or every one night for 5 weeks running. I have a few quick slides, which I'm going to go through in about 5 seconds each. This is our basic wireframe for the experience, and this is sort of very basic comp that I've put together with somebody who was working for me very briefly. I think I'm going to have to let you imagine how these elements break down. But essentially, the bar graphs or other data visualizations that we want to develop, I can't develop. I mean, that's mainly why Mike and Ina wanted me to come here and talk about it today, because I'm not a technical wizard of any kind by any stretch of the imagination. So basically, we're seeking collaborators because we want to put this film as an interactive film online in advance of the 2014 midterm elections, certainly by next spring, and we'd love to have a beta version available early next year. Essentially, Reality Check has been carved out of all of our broadcast deals with PBS and various other partners internationally. It's carved out of our digital deals. The film is available on iTunes and Amazon and many major partners already. But we have a sort of a special deal where we split all the rights so that we can do whatever we want with an interactive version. So if anything I've said is interesting, all my details are right there. We're very early on in our social media growth as well, so I'd really appreciate it if anybody followed or liked us. And cool. I'm sure I'm at least a minute over, so awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Devon Harris. Thank you guys for staying. Try to get you out of here quickly. Just want to introduce what we're doing at ochre. Ochre is the pigment that cavemen used 30,000 years ago to draw on cave walls. So this is the origin of recorded storytelling. So what we're doing with this new company is really the evolution of storytelling, where we allow the viewer to participate in the story. So I'm actually a music producer by trade, which is a whole other story, but I made a music video a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago now, which was the first Choose Your Own Adventure music video on YouTube. So we got a lot of press about it, and what was really interesting was that we made a linear version, which was on MTV, and the response to the linear version of this video was lukewarm, right? In terms of the song and the group. This song is okay. The response to the interactive version of that same content, this song is amazing. Same song, same visual content, but one of them you could make choices in terms of the storyline. So that was pretty unique, and me and my friends thought that was cool. Different media companies approached me saying, we need that technology. But we didn't have any technology. So we spent the time since then making exactly that. So let's see it in action. What I'm going to show you here is a short film that we've created. It's about 15 to 17 minutes, but we're just going to see one scene from it. And I'll need you guys to help me make a choice as it plays. Stop it now. Keep it. Normally you would keep playing. Normally we keep playing, but I just want to get everyone's response as it's playing. So right now we have a choice to keep this wallet or give it back.
Keep
it. The keep it is the louder contention here. So this is the storyline for this film, right? So what's interesting is that you make choices just like in real life. Sometimes there are immediate consequences. Sometimes there's consequences later. So this is a short film that we're working on putting on top of next year. So there's also commercial applications for what we do as well, right? Which I'll show you very quickly.
This life is not an easy one. But the one thing that has haunted me is finding the truth about my parents.
Future or past?
Past.
Alright, past.
Did you tell the boy about his father? If you want the truth about your parents, Peter, come and get it. That's not your job.
Maybe it is.
Girl or save the world? Girl.
You're a wanted man, Peter Parker.
So you get an idea of how this works, and what's interesting at the end, you can share this to social media. This is playable in your social media streams. It's interactive. And so we have the different versions where it's seamless or where it switches instantly. And what we've noticed is that the same thing that we saw with the music video is true with ads or long-form content, where people are watching it longer, they remember the content more, and I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with how the engagement works with this sort of content. So we're actually, we started this as a service, and now we've actually built out a pretty robust platform to service this, called Adventure. So with Adventure, we can design the stories. So I'll point out to you right here. Very simple drag and drop interface for creating interactive content. We can go in, we can edit how they're related, we can link out. You can actually have commerce from within the video. You can check out the analytics, how people are making choices within the content as well. So we see here, it's fairly even in terms of how people are making choices, but when you pick the girl here, there's a higher conversion. More people are actually picking to purchase the tickets from the girl choice, right? So this is a very new platform. We actually will be launching next month. These are some of the people that we're launching with the next couple of months. So on the corporate side of things, we're starting to develop a name in the community. But what we like to do is open this platform up to everyone. So starting tonight with you guys, we're launching our private beta. And anyone who's interested in getting access to this platform, you feel free to contact me here. And I'll send you out a short questionnaire, and then you'll get access. As long as you can give feedback in terms of your experience, it's totally open. And so, the next few months will be spent perfecting this and seeing what you guys need. And we're super excited.
Awesome.